Alrighty, so we are leaving work yet again, just like we are every time we have this video. But over this weekend, we had the best sapper competition going on. So all of my 6 teams that have been training out for the past roughly like 26-ish weeks, finally got the chance to head up and actually show off everything they've been training for up at the competition. So we sent up 6 teams, 5 of them competed. Let's see. With that, we had one team who was doing phenomenal, made it all the way up to 2nd place. Fortunately, there was a sickness going around, caught that, had some issues as a result of the sickness, had to get pulled due to medical reasons, which hurt a lot because there was nothing that we could have done better to have avoided that, because it was purely just a matter of being sick. So that one hurt a lot to get the news of. Besides that, we have the video going wild, but besides that, 2 teams got cut when they dropped it down to 30 teams. So one team finished 46th, another team 33rd, I believe. Besides that, one team made it across in 30th place right now. The next team is currently in 9th place, with the last event happened this morning. And then we get to hear the final results tomorrow at 11 a.m. So was really hoping this team did very well for this last event. So hoping that they moved up maybe a spot or 2 to like 7th or 8th place. But regardless, it looks like they're finishing in the top 10. So we did not have all of our teams. They did not all have the ability to do the entire competition. Those cuts down to the top 30 happened after day 2, so they could not do day 3 and day 4. So some heartbreakers in there. But overall, seeing one of those teams still make it, 2 out of 5 of our teams made it on to those final 2 days. Overall, fairly successful. So fortunately, my entire time watching this has been through Facebook and through FaceTime. Was not able to make it up there. Good old government shutting me down in that regard, not allowed to go. But here we are. But on that same vein, on Thursday, we had our Power and Grace staff call. Goodness gracious. Power and Grace staff call, and on that call, I was asked to give a continuing education lecture on building a team. So I have mentioned this plenty of times before. I feel like I'm great at programming, great at technical analysis, all that jazz, but I do feel like I am one of the best in the country at actually building that team dynamic, especially in a remote environment. So Spencer asked me, hey, you're really good at this. Teach us all how to do it. So got that notice on like Tuesday, started putting it together got that notice on Tuesday. It was on for Thursday. So in 2 days, I felt like I put together a pretty damn good presentation. And today we're just kind of talk about that a little bit. The biggest takeaway that I would have for other people from that entire presentation I did is all about the fact that your individual relationships are a reflection, or your team dynamic, your team culture is a reflection of your individual relationships. So you can think you have the best team dynamic, like, oh, everyone's supporting each other, everyone's cheering each other on, like we're hype as hell, everyone like goes to each other's meets. But if your actual individual relationships are not up to par, then your team also is not up to par. Because if you've ever been, like, if you have a job, you love your fucking coworkers, but you have a boss who's just fucking terrible. Sure, like, you have some great relationships with your coworkers, but all of y'all are talking shit about your boss behind his back, and you're just going to create a mutiny one of these days. So you can have what looks like this great team dynamic, but if there is not that original base of the individual relationships, then that team dynamic isn't what you think it is. It's sure there is a dynamic there, but a lot of that dynamic is built upon the dislike of you. Like, I've had plenty of really good work friends before that when I stopped working at the place, we stopped talking, simply because a lot of the connection that was there was circulated around terrible customers or terrible management. So there's that whole, like, not really like thriving in the chaos, but building the relationship in that stressful environment. That stress just builds that team cohesion. So if you don't have those individual relationships, there will be a team dynamic, but it's not going to be one fostered by you or one that you even run by any means. There's going to be a revolt on your hands one of these days. So your team is purely going to be a reflection of all of the individual relationships you have with your athletes. So very first thing is, do you have a relationship with your athletes? Do they love you? Would they move mountains for you? Would you move mountains for them? If they're married, if they have kids, do you know their spouse's name? Do you know their kid's name? Do you know things about their life? Are you checking in on things that are going on? Like, are they getting a new job? Did they just get a PhD grant? Both of those are examples from athletes I have where I'm checking up on them. Someone got engaged. I'm reaching out like, hey, give me every fucking detail. Like, I need to know this. Like, I'm all in. Like, what's going on? When are you surprised? And like, give me the details. So you need to be actively engaged in their life, and you need to actively know things about their life. On that same vein, use their language. So one of the big things that we do here as civilians working with the Army is use their language. If you have a new commander coming in and the word that they really love, they use all the time is lethality, let's say, then every single brief we're going to give to that commander, we are going to use the word lethality. We're going to use his words, her words, whatever. We're going to use the commander's words to highlight that we are listening to them and we are actively following their lead to try to meet their request. And again, in a coach-athlete relationship, you are simply there as an advisor. You are there to help them reach their pinnacle. They're not there to help you be a better coach or to help you win more medals or put more things in your Instagram bio. So using their language, like, hey, I always have a twinge in my shoulder when I do snatches. All right, I'm not going to say pain. I'm not going to say discomfort. I'm going to use the fucking word twinge because, again, one, shows I'm listening to you. Two, we're speaking the same language so we can now reach that goal better because we know on both sides that the communication is meeting exactly understood on both sides. So listen to them, know about them, use their language. Another good one here, this question I've started to add into all of my intro calls with new athletes is, at some point, you will be done with this sport. You will put down the barbell for a last time and never pick it back up again. Whether that is injury, death, or just you choose to move on from the sport. There will be a day when you are no longer a weightlifter. So fast forward to that day. If you were to look back on your career as an athlete, what would have had to have happened to make you feel successful? Because you can ask, all right, short-term goals, in the next 6 months what you want to do, in the next 2 years what you want to do, long-term, things like that. And they can tell you these numbers, like they can tell you, oh, I want to hit 120, 160, I want to compete at nationals. But all of those may not actually be what they want. If you're asking them, hey, what do you want to hit? That's one thing. But to actually have them define what a successful career looks like for them is a very deep and very personal question. And every single time I've asked that question, it comes with about 2 minutes of silence where it is purely just them. They've never thought about it before. And it's like, what actually does success mean to me? Because if you're just going based off numbers, sure, you may reach that goal. But if you look at that study of like Olympians, a lot of Olympians get depressed after they compete at the Olympics because they've spent entire quad, maybe 1-2 quads, focusing on one singular goal on one singular day. And when that day happens, who are they now? What are they now? They reached their goal. They competed at the highest level in their sport. And they were happy. But now, what is left of them? Because they were so singularly focused, who even are they now? You can reach that goal, but then, all right, now what? Am I just a shell of myself because I was so singularly focused on just a number? What have I become? If you can actually define success, you can make that goal much, much larger than just a simple number of 120, 160. And hey, their definition of success may be a number, but at least making it clear on both ends, what actually would a successful career look like? And then from there, how can I help you get there? What kind of coaching do you need? How best do you respond? Do we need to talk every day? Do you need to talk once a week? Do you need this super in-depth video analysis? Do you need a hype man? Do you just need someone to be there to listen to you when shit's going bad? What actually do you need out of a coach? So what is success? What do you need out of a coach? That was all just slide number 1, just for the record. It was straight into your community as a reflection of you, into just straight there first contact. So all this again is just that individual. That builds off into something much greater. If you can have the individual down, your community will take care of itself. From there, we moved on to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So we have that 5-tiered pyramid there. at the bottom is just your base necessities, food, water, so on and so forth. Coaching is a luxury service. If they're paying for coaching, they most likely, or at least should, have all those base needs met pretty well. Going up from there, I honestly forgot how the actual pyramid goes. I would have to look at it so I can actually give the presentation. But on there, we're talking about autonomy. How can we give the athletes some ownership of their program to make them feel like it's not just a one-way, hey, do this, but actually make them feel like they're involved in their own success. Another one in there, I'm kind of blanking right now, honestly, but Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So making sure we are fulfilling that individual as a person so that we can get the most out of them as an athlete. Because again, it's all back to the individual. From there, we can talk about that actual team a little bit more if you have that base of the individual. The biggest part that I wanted to highlight in there was building versus nurturing. So building takes a lot of fucking work. The example I really liked for that one was Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett. They are the owners of Berkshire Hathaway. Buffett lives in Omaha. I'm from Omaha, so I've heard quite a lot about him over my entire life. Charlie Munger has this quote of get to $100,000 as quickly as possible. It's all about compounding interest. So the time that it takes to compound from 0 to 100,000 is many, many years. It takes a fuck long to just make $100,000. But once you have 100,000, the compounding interest, it grows to $1 million very quickly. So once you have that base level built, it can grow like a fucking wildfire. But we need to put in a lot of work on the front end to build that in the first place. So that's that same idea here, is it's going to take a lot of work to build your community. There's not going to be a lot of people talking at first. You're bringing in a bunch of people who don't know each other. Their only connection is through you and through the sport. So it is going to require you to do a lot of the heavy work, whether that is like a group chat where you're maybe the only one texting most days and putting things out there. It could be social media where you're not getting a lot of traction. But just whatever way you go about it, it requires a shit ton of front end work to get it off the ground. But once we have it off the ground, your team runs it more or less on autopilot for you. So what we do, we have a Slack group chat on there. We do a question of the day. When we first started questions of the day, I would have to make sure I was the first person to answer every time, because otherwise there may not be a single message for the day. Once I answered, boom, comments would start to trickle in, and basically that's it. We've now been doing this for 9 to 12 months. Some days I don't answer because there's already 10 fucking messages in there and I don't have a better answer than what everyone else said. So this nurturing component now happens because of all the work that went in on the front end. I don't have to do as much work to keep things going because but mostly the athletes do it for me. They have built up these relationships with each other that now I can take a step back, work as more of like that managerial role, that advisor role, rather than as the one trying to run every single situation. So it's going to take a lot of work to build something up, but once you have it built up, it will run pretty seamlessly for you. There was a lot more to that presentation. It was like 40 minutes, 30 minutes, something like that. So it was fairly long, and that was to our staff, so I can't share the video with anyone. But if you'd like to hear that presentation, invite me to something, and I will give that presentation. I already have plenty of ideas on how to build more into that presentation to make it even better. So if you would like to hear me give that presentation, invite me to a place, whether in person or online, to give that presentation, and I will do so. Otherwise, if you have questions, leave a comment, and I'll probably answer them.